Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Fairstone's very first webinar on financial education, a bridge to security. My name is François Cote, and I'm the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Fairstone Financial and the Chair of the Board of Directors of JA Canada, or JA Quebec, that is. I am thrilled to be your host for today. Bonjour à tous. Cette discussion aujourd'hui va être en anglais. Alors, si vous préférez écouter la conférence en français, s'il vous plaît, cliquez sur le bouton d'interprétation, cliquez sur le français et par la suite, assurez-vous de cliquer sur Mute Original Audio. The webinar aims to highlight the importance of financial knowledge for everyone in Canada and to help develop the self-assurance needed to achieve financial security. As a leading provider of financial responsible solutions, we at Fairstone believe that people in Canada of all ages, women and youth, need to have access to knowledge to understand personal and broader financial terms. We have a fantastic panel today of leaders from some of Canada's most impactful organizations who will share their learning and experiences on how we can improve financial awareness and security. We're going to discuss mainly about how financial literacy can empower women to build and protect their financial assets, how financial literacy tools go hand in hand with gendered economic justice efforts, how organizations have a vital role in educating customers and employees by offering financial wellness programs that speak to their challenges, and to the positive impact on today's youth by putting financial literacy concept into practice. To set the stage, I'd like to invite our panelists and welcome Paulette, Scott, Veronique, and Trish to our very own virtual stage. And thank you very much for joining us today. I'm excited to spend the next 50 minutes or so on how financial education can build a bridge to security. I'm going to start with some introduction of each of our panelists. As a side note, if you want to learn more about our speakers, their full bios are on our events page on fairstone.ca. So I'll start with Paulette Senior, who's the president and CEO of the Canadian Women's Foundation. She has devoted her career to empowering women and girls to overcome barriers and reach their full potential. Her work with the foundation is guided by the vision of an inclusive national movement towards gender equality and equity that will strengthen all Canadians. As the president and CEO of Junior Achievements Canada, Scott Hilliard believes that development of youth is essential to building strong national economies. His vision and commitment to relevant education that leverages emerging technology is setting the stage for JA to increase its student reach with more equitable access for all Canadian communities. Veronique Dorval is the Chief Client Experience Officer at Sun Life, where she leads the design and delivery of meaningful client experiences across Sun Life channels and businesses in Canada. She is a chartered financial analyst, and her 12 years of experience in management consultant provides her with a wealth of knowledge and broad financial expertise. And Trish Hammond, who is Fairstone's newly appointed VP of Direct Lending, has a vast experience at Fairstone. Since joining Fairstone, she's had several leadership roles until most recently, where she was the area director for Ontario. She is well known for her involvement in the community, as well as volunteering and assisting with programs such as the Food Banks Canada, Junior Achievements, and working with local women's shelters. So again, welcome everyone, and glad you can join us. So with that, let's dive right into the discussion and make the most of the time that we have today. So I'll start with financial literacy and tools and knowledge. So I'd love to know, how does your organization provide access to tools and resources to help Canadians navigate everyday financial decisions and take a proactive step towards achieving financial security? So I think maybe we can start with Scott and some of the terrific work JA Canada is doing. So Scott?
Sure. Thanks very much, Francois. For those folks that aren't familiar with Junior Achievement, our organization's been operating in Canada for over 65 years. So we do focus our program delivery in concert with the education system across. We're working in partnership with schools, with teachers, and the programs that we grade school students. So, Francois, when you say, proactive, I don't think it gets any more proactive than teaching youth about budgeting and saving money, in elementary school than that. So, and that's really the heart of this. We know that youth in their early years, their seminal years, while they're learning actively in school, they're quite impressionable. And it's a great opportunity for them to really acquire the skills and the knowledge that they might need to be successful in the future. And success obviously includes, financial independence, financial capability, and financial well-being. So we've been doing this now for many years, and we're happy to say that we've got free programming offered across the country. We're reaching about 200,000 youth a year in partnership with about 8,000 teachers. So it's a great opportunity, a great platform, great distribution of the content, but we know we can always do more. So, but that's really the role that JA fills, in the sense of providing some early opportunity and knowledge and skills that would help them make better financial decisions as they move on in life.
Yeah, no, it's and I mentioned earlier JA Canada, and I chair the local board here of JA Quebec. And so been very involved for 6 years, and I agree the proactiveness is something that's really important. Maybe Paulette, we can see what thoughts you might have.
Sure, thank you, Francois. It's great to be here with all my co-panelists. So the Canadian Women's Foundation hasn't been around as long as JA Canada. We've been around for 30 years now, and it was really founded to address matters of gender equality across Canada. And so we have a number of different programs in which we do that. One of the most important rungs that we know of that to bring about gender equality would be economic development. So the foundation funds economic development programs for diverse women and gender diverse people who are living on a low income. And that's about providing opportunity to gain skills, to work in lucrative fields of the tech and trade sectors, as well as self-employment. Or it's also for those who are most marginalized to build their employability skills and be able to work, get the kind of valuable work experience through supportive social enterprises. And, these programs that we provide are holistic in nature. So, for example, when it comes to building towards sustainable livelihoods for women, the programs actually take an assets-based approach. And by that, I mean, it's about helping the participants to recognize that they come with and then can build assets in various areas of their lives. And these would include networks and connections and cultural identity and self-confidence. So, also to be able to address and identify financial assets, which is one of the areas that we focus on, not just about building access to better incomes, but working with folks to manage their finances, file their taxes. A lot of folks would have left that behind, especially if they've been through trauma in their lives, as well as to support those who are burgeoning entrepreneurs in the self-employment field, for example. So this is about going beyond their personal finances to include basic understanding of accounting and how to read a balance sheet, how to create and manage a budget. So all those kind of transferable skills that I like to call essential skills.
No, thanks, Paulette. And I think one of the interesting thing about the panel today and the folks that we have on is we have a great combination of corporates and NGOs. And I think as we go through this, it really does take an ecosystem to continue to make progress on this really important subject. So maybe I can move to Veronique, and you can share on the corporate side. You can start sharing some of your thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm not playing a number game, but Sun Life has been founded 156 years ago. And since then, our purpose is really to help our client achieve financial security. And now also, in the last few years, we added Live Healthier Life. And we think there's a strong relationship between the health of the people and their ability to manage their finance. some of the tools that we have in place. So on our website, you can find a lot of tools that goes from budget calculator tool, how do you make a good budget, being able to understand how much protection you need in your life, being able to understand retirement calculator. So we have a series of tools that are available not only to our client, all Canadian can try it. We have a Bright Life newsletter that we distribute monthly, and we'll have every time new tips, new access to tools. And we have 100,000 clients and non-clients. Actually, we have more people that are non-clients that have access to the newsletter than our own client. We also have more than 3,000 advisors through the country in hundreds of communities that are helping each client understand and answer questions related to their own financial life. So their purpose is really to provide advice and to help take action towards financial security. And the last thing I would say is we are working in the workplace also. So not only individual by individual, but we're making a session every year in the workplace. We're reaching about 25,000 people every year just through workplace. And this is to provide general financial literacy or specific to topics like retirement, for example. So many different ways we make those tools and Notion accessible to Canadians.
Yeah, no, very, and I think on the heritage, I'll let Trish start, and I think there's a lot of experience around the virtual stage. So with that, maybe Trish, I can see what you have to add.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francois. And since we are playing this numbers game, I think Francois alluded to it, but we definitely fall right in the middle there, closing in on 100 years. So I would say what makes me proud to be part of Fairstone, not just that 100-year legacy, but how we help not only customers, but also our employees. And Veronique, you've talked about it, but all this month we've been offering financial wellness webinars through our Sun Life partners here, educating our teams about financial literacy, how they can reach their financial and retirement savings goals. And honestly, the more knowledgeable and comfortable our employees are, the better they can help our customers. I would say also, even if a customer isn't in one of our offices or talking on the phone, anyone can check out our blogs. We have videos, we have social media content, and we cover an array of topics from borrowing money, debt management, saving, budgeting, fraud prevention, and more. And when you said, Francois, taking proactive, say the one that stands out to me personally, and especially listening to Scott and Paulette, partnering with the Junior Achievement Women's World of Choices. Actually, Scott and I were talking about that right before we started. I know I've personally participated in a few of these, and the questions, the engagement, the interest of these young women who look at the direction they want to take, what it means to them when they're looking at their futures, and whether they want to be part of the finance industry or not. It's truly one of my most fulfilling and empowering times to sit there face to face. And although virtually this year, but still to be able to talk and mentor and perhaps help in the direction of the future of our women leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing is for sure, there's a lot of activities ongoing from the panelists and their organizations that maybe it's a good way to get into the second part of this question is really the examples of some of the benefits of the work that we're all doing in this and why is it so important. And maybe just because we were talking about JA, makes sense to, we'll start again with Scott to just continue that discussion and talk a bit about the benefits of financial literacy.
Sure, absolutely. And maybe I'll put it in the context of teaching youth, because obviously that's what we're focusing on with junior achievement. So, anecdotally, I appreciate Trish, your support as a volunteer, and I'm sure you've got stories of that talking to the young women that you worked with, and that you already get a sense of the impact. We've got lots of anecdotal stories and testimonials of the value and importance of teaching youth these concepts while they're young. But years ago, we actually partnered with the Boston Consulting Group as well, and we wanted to actually do a holistic assessment, really a due diligence on really, is there really impact on youth if you teach them these concepts early on? Does it actually change their lives? And so Boston Consulting Group actually leaned into this project for 18 months, and they actually evaluated 500 J alumni and 5,000 other Canadians that were non-J alumni, and concluded that by teaching youth these concepts earlier, it was demonstrated, because they were actually researching adults and looking back in their life, and it was concretely concluded that by teaching them these concepts early, they did eventually get to a position where they were saving more than they were spending. They stayed in school longer. They achieved a higher level in their careers. So these are small little things at the front end, but they just amplify over time, and they actually do have a long-term impact, which in turn benefits our economy. So I think that the evidence is pretty strong in that regard. And that's what really drives us at Junior Achievement, to try and make sure we're maximizing all the opportunity we have while the youth are in school, for them to acquire these fundamental skills that we know are going to impact the rest of their lives.
Yeah, no, quite powerful. And I know, Veronique, there's again lots of continued work at Sun Life on and some of what you're seeing in terms of some of the benefits.
Yeah, so I would say I agree with what you were saying, Scott. The earlier we can start, the more impact that we can see. A few things that we've observed is people that have access to good financial information, and for us it often translates into a financial plan, so a way of kind of taking control of your finance. We see that their stress level get reduced. We see that their mental health improve, that they are saving more, they're less absent at work. So it have a lot of different impact. It also opens option. So if you don't have good financial literacy, you don't know what options are in front of you to manage your risk in order to reach your goal. And sometimes you're going to wait until something bad happened to you. And when that happens, you have less option available. So being able to know before and be proactive about, choosing to protect or choosing to have different options to save is also a very important benefit of financial literacy.
Mm-hmm. And maybe on a personal, I have a 14-year-old daughter. She's going to be 15 soon, and I think this idea of diversity and how do we think about that, and maybe Paulette, with some of the great work that you guys are doing, right, and the benefits from a diversity and an equality perspective as generation is coming up. I certainly, it's near and dear to me, and I'm sure to many. So.
Yeah, and I can actually continue to build on what both Scott and Veronique have been saying. And I can start by saying that there's nothing more powerful than someone especially a woman, a young woman, any woman, who has financial independence. Because when you have financial independence, many doors are open to you to much brighter financial future, but much brighter future overall. And so we know the importance of financial literacy is one of those key things. Scott was talking about teaching that to young people. For us, it's important that financial literacy be inclusive and intersectional. And by that monosyllabic word, what I mean is that it's got to reach people where they're at, as well as understanding their identity. So, for example, it could be a woman who has a disability, who is Indigenous, right? So understanding their identity and therefore their social reality that they're living in is important. And that's what I mean by inclusive. So not just teaching as if everyone is a monolith, not just responding as if everyone's a monolith. So really doing that and empower folks toward financial independence and be able to open those doors. And at the Canadian Women's Foundation, we know all too well that financial dependence is intertwined with many other issues, right? So for us, we're working with women who are for the most part, rebuilding their lives, usually from trauma of abuse and violence and poverty, etc. So when women are financially dependent, there are more barriers to leaving, for example, in order to rebuild their lives. Many of us have also grown up in families and cultures where the higher income earners usually are the men and who make all the financial decisions. So building a strong sense of financial literacy for girls and women early on can pave the way toward a more equal approach to financial decision making, where you're not leaving it up to somebody because they're the higher bread income earner, and investments that contribute to higher earnings for the whole family can and therefore set a great example for the next generation. So I think that's what's important. And it's also one of the things that we know at the Canadian Women's Foundation that many other women's organizations are looking to as well, is that it's also predicted that women stand to control a growing share of Canada's wealth. Right? So through personal assets and transfers of generational wealth, so they actually need to be making smart decisions about what to do with it, as opposed to when it hits them. And so there are indicators that women are more interested in socially responsible investments or ESG investing, for example, that's focused on the environment or social and governance issues. And it's exciting to think about the social change that could help drive forward in the future that will affect all of us.
I can guarantee you, my daughter talks a lot about not sure she understands ESG yet, but certainly she talks a lot about ESG related issues. And I know recently, Trish, we did do dove into some surveys around retirement, and I don't know if you wanted to talk a bit about the benefits of some of that work that we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, as I've said, we try to make sure that everybody can take a look at that. I was listening to everyone, and knowledge is power, right? And we know that I think it's a third of Canadians aren't financially prepared for retirement, and more of a third of Canadians don't have that emergency fund, if you will. And Paulette, when you're talking about diversity, and I think of individuals, and I think of all our customers that come in are individuals, and our employees have to take the time to get to know those customers and ask what their priorities are. Is it short term? Is it retirement? Individualized products and payments, and teach them how they can pay off debt even earlier and save a little bit more. Have that 3 months pay for emergencies, if you will. We see the costs are climbing for everything, basics like food and shelter, and then you add in one unusual expense like maybe a snow tires or a pet bill, and that can put someone in a difficult spot. So knowing how to do the small tips to work towards making an emergency fund and then a retirement fund can really go a long way.
Yeah, no, it's and what's I hope that for all of those listening in, that it's a no-brainer that we should be collectively investing in financial literacy, and it's the broadest of sense, but yet we continue some barriers, and we continue to some would argue to lack the amount of progress that's required. So maybe we can talk a bit about what are some of the barriers that you see that have prevented financial literacy to be broadly, adopted, and also importantly, what are some of the things that your organization is doing specifically to help address some of those gaps? And
people, wanting to avoid area that they're not so comfortable with. So like we talk about the ostrich effect, when people have a tendency to ignore something that is dangerous or a risky situation. Or sometimes there's overconfidence where people are just using optimistic rule to say, no, everything's going to be fine. There's a present bias. All of those are psychological biases of how our brain is functioning that makes it quite difficult to say, I'm going to go and understand better financial literacy or financial question. The other thing that we see significantly is people feeling that they have not enough understanding to even sit in front of an advisor or someone that can give them the information. So because they are afraid that they're going to be taken advantage of, or they have that bias that if they don't know already, putting themselves in front of a specialist is going to be disadvantageous to them. So we're trying to work at understanding those biases, and based on that, adapt the way that we are talking to clients. We've created a behavioral economic center of excellence to really make it easier, acknowledging that all of that is the way our brain works, to make it more palatable for a client to go and get information. One of the other bias is social bias. There's a lot of places where it's still taboo to talk about finance. You don't talk with your kids about finance. You don't talk with your family about finance. It's a topic that is kind of hidden somewhere in the corner. And that's also an important bias. And finally, I talk about inertia. Like there's a lot of people that, or I would say there's very few people that are excited about getting into financial topic. And so they'll resist it, and they won't spend a lot of time on it. I think the number of hours that someone spent on vacation is something like 10 times more than in planning their retirement, although probably retirement's going to last much longer in their life. So we're also trying to make it easy and break it in small steps what clients or Canadians should do. I think that's the other barriers, is how do we go against that inertia by simplifying taking steps.
Excellent. No, thanks. I actually that concept of the bias has really resonated with me, and it's so true. How many biases exist? And just before I pass it to Trish, I understand that we might have had a bit of a glitch with the sound, so our apologies for that, and hopefully everything is running smooth at this point. But with that, Trish, maybe I can see if you have anything to add, and then we'll switch gears and talk about some of the great work that the NGOs are doing.
Sure, absolutely, Francois. I think Veronique covered it very, very well. Let's face it, borrowing money, learning about finances, retirement, etc. It's such an overwhelming process, really, for anyone. And to me, one of the biggest barriers, and Veronique touched on this, is feeling that you can't reach out and struggling to work it out on your own. I know for us, we have an online quote that can allow the customer to, just get started, put in an amount, get an approval in minutes without impacting their credit score. And then from there, the employees in the branch look at the big picture for that customer. So, so many times you see a request for a really small amount to cover unexpected expenses, and maybe they could or couldn't put that amount on a credit card or pull it from their account. But once we look at that full picture, we may be able to offer them the ability to consolidate a few different expenses into one payment, coordinate it with their paydays, and then recommend keeping just that one credit card that's now paid off for the emergencies only. But it all starts, as Veronique said, of just getting over that fear and being able to contact and talk to someone and just get that foot started on that.
Yeah, no, excellent, Trish. And Scott, maybe we can, we'll kind of switch gears here from the corporates, and maybe we can get some of the thoughts from a JA perspective on those, again, the barriers to entry.
Yeah, I think, we've touched on quite a bit of information, right? So, making sure that the right content so that the learner, whether it's a youth or an adult, it actually has access to that information to actually learn and build their own skill set, build their own confidence. I think, Paulette, I think you touched on the importance of building confidence, right? You can't make a decision if you don't know the options, right? So there's one piece of the knowledge. And the second one is you got to be confident and that your decision you're going to make is actually the right one. I guess a barrier that we're focusing on right now is access to this information. We've heard that that we've come through the information age. Remember, we've moved from encyclopedias to online Wikipedia, and all this information's out there. In fact, this is the Financial Literacy Month right now, and if you just Google Financial Literacy Month, you'll probably get a million hits on all the content that great organizations like Fairstone, like Sun Life, like the NGOs, Paulette and myself work for. We're all in this together. And I think it's one of those examples where it does take a village, to help raise a child. And it does take a village. It does take a nation to build financial literacy, to build financial capability. So we're all working on the right thing. And I think that information, right, needs to continue to flow. The investments from all of us need to continue to flow. But one of the barriers that we're working on right now is access to that information. Because even though we live in a developed nation, there's still probably too large of a percentage of our youth that don't have access to internet or don't have access to hardware that can connect to the internet. We can all think back when we were in school. Think about when you were in school. How many computers were there in your school that you could actually go and do things on the internet with, right? That hasn't changed in a lot of communities. So accessing that information and making sure that more and more of our population have accessibility, right? Have equal accessibility to that information, I think is a key piece, because once people have access to the information, they can learn from it. They're going to change their way of thinking. They're going to build new skills. They're going to build that confidence that we were talking about, and they're going to ultimately change their behaviors. So I know, and there's great organizations that are doing super things. Like Cisco, for example, has a great initiative called Connected North, where they're leveraging technology to make sure the northern peoples, the indigenous folks in the north that have very limited access to internet and hardware, are actually getting access to some really best-in-class content so they can learn, no different than if someone lived in downtown Toronto and had all those resources themselves. So making that level playing field, that equitable access to all the great content and all the great mentors that are participating in these the delivery of that content, I see as a great effort that we still need to keep working on.
Mm-hmm. No, well said. Yeah, access is certainly something so critically important, and I'm sure it ties into some of the work, Paulette, that you guys are doing.
You read my mind, Francois, because that's exactly what I was going to say, is that the issue of access that Scott so eloquently talked about is critical. And when I think of the work we do across Canada, particularly in remote and rural and northern communities, access is the number one issue, not just in terms of making sure that it's available, but making sure that it's available based on how it can be used and that it relates to people's reality. For us at the Canadian Women's Foundation, we look at barriers in two ways. We'll look at it on an individual level as well as on a systemic or societal level. So before I talked about the fact that a lot of the folks that we support through the organizations that we fund are women who are have experienced some sort of trauma in their lives, or who are rebuilding their lives from that, and who have experienced marginalization or all kinds of issues that have kept them from being able to build their lives and to manage their own lives. And many have the building blocks for very strong skills to manage their own finances. But for those who are on social assistance, for example, they may not have had access to a number of these tools. And they know they have to know all the ins and outs of the various programs they're a part of. And a lot of them are spending time trying to make ends meet by doing a number of different things in order to keep a shelter over their heads and to be able to feed their families. So, but with the support of of organizations that we fund, we're able to then move them out of subsistence kinds of existence into jobs that offer income security. And it's about leveraging the skills, as I said earlier, that they already have and applying them to other kinds of strategies, such as budgeting and saving and all the things that have already been mentioned. On a broader level, on a systemic or a societal level, we need to raise awareness and advocate against systemic barriers that women face when it comes to earning equal pay, for example, for equal work. So that's a systemic issue that we advocate on. The gender pay gap is something that has persisted across a number of industries and professional ranks. And so we know that it's important, and we know that it gets worse for those who have multiple identities, indigenous, disability, racialized, etc. Newcomers, example, is a good example. So we know we need to advocate to have equal pay. And no matter how hard women are working to save and manage their finances, these systemic barriers or disparities that get in the way of them being able to actually contribute. And the other thing that I just want to quickly mention is that we also know from statistics that women who are age 65 and over are more likely to live on a low income than their male counterparts, probably because they outlive their male counterparts, but because they are already behind the eighth ball, so to speak. So it's important that we actually look at these issues as well as look at other things. If we don't have affordable, dependable, quality childcare, that's a barrier, for women being able to pursue their goals. And so these are a number of things that we are working on in terms of funding the programs, but also advocating to address these bigger systemic issues.
No, it's very, very insightful. It's going to certainly be a journey and continued journey. And again, thanks to the work that you are all doing to continue this journey forward. And maybe we'll keep going here. And one of the things certainly I think that's been predictable in the last couple of years is how unpredictable that it continues to be. So maybe what are some of the maybe advice or thoughts that you might have in terms of how can people and what can they do to increase their financial security in what we could describe are very much unpredictable events that we are currently living in, such as a global pandemic. But these things happen, maybe not a pandemic, but certainly, disruptions are something that can occur. So, Véronique, I'm sure you guys do some work on this and would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I'll start with one that I think a lot of Canadian I've experienced, not all, but a lot of Canadian I experienced in the last 20 months is actually saving more. So before the pandemic, the average saving rate was about 1.3% in 2019. It peaked at something like 27% in May and June of 2020. And now it's down more around 14%. But for a lot of people, like it's partly controlling, how much you're saving. So I would say the more you can get that under control, the more you can create a little cushion, that 3 to 6 months security cushion, and plan also not for paycheck to paycheck, but longer than that. And Paulette, I know that in some area, in some more vulnerable segment of people that you are helping, this is not that easy to do. So I'm not saying it's the solution for everyone. The other thing I would say, so for people who have some investment and can invest, and we see that in the period of big changes like pandemic, people get very anxious when the markets start to become very volatile. So you have to make sure that you have your plan ahead and you know why you are saving. So if you are saving for the long term, when those change and the turbulence happen, you need to stop looking at the number and stay focused on your end goal. So a lot of the work that we've done at least at the beginning of the pandemic, was to try to calm down everyone and convince clients to just stay invested. If you're here for the long run, and that was a good choice for a client that didn't panic, which was most of the client. But you don't want to sell when the market just tanked. Like that's the worst time to get out. So being convinced of why you're investing, the duration, and stay there even when things become volatile. And as much as possible, like we're promoting protection so that you feel that you are covered for the important risks that can happen in your life. I think it's important to do that, as we talked about at the beginning, in a proactive way. Which risk are you worried about? Is it about protecting your income in case you are sick? Is it about leaving something for your loved one if you were to not be there in the future? And there's a way to protect yourself so that you can feel better, knowing that it could happen, and you have a good plan B. And if it ever happened, that you know that part, at least the financial aspect, is covered.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks, Veronique. Certainly, I've been with Fairstone or its predecessor companies for close to 18 years, and I know a lot of the work we do with our customers day in and day out is around certainly helping them and helping them understand. And Trish, maybe I can let you talk through some of the work that we see and do every day helping customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Francois. I mean, Veronique, I think you covered it so well. Amazing points, and you're right. The pandemic has definitely impacted everyone in different ways, and including our customers and in other groups such as Scott and Paulette had talked about as well. I mean, we hear the concerns of Canadians, of our customers, that they don't always have that safety net for the emergencies. And I know you talked about that 3 to 6 months. I mean, some of them don't have that for longer term goals such as retirement, but even in the short term, when you think about some of those basic goods like groceries and gas and housing that I talked about before that continue to increase. But I say it's never too late to start. And I think it starts with things like today. Start by educating yourself. If you had that budget before, I bet you've probably seen changes throughout this pandemic as to how and what you spend your money on. Take time to review it, adjust it, reflect it for your new situation. Things change. When we talk to our customers, we say, if a loan is 4 or 5 years, that's a long time. I mean, a lot of things happen to us over a period of time, or 4 or 5 years. And for some, maybe they've never had a budget. And again, it's never too late to start saving now. Look at small ways you can cut back and, start paying yourself first to be able to start saving.
Excellent. No, thanks, Trish, and thank you, Veronique. I think we might have. Well, I think we'll probably. Where has the time gone? So we might have time for one last question here, maybe a closing question, and then we do certainly want to take a few minutes for Q&A. So with that, maybe I can, it's a question for all of you, and the question is really around, what advice do you have to give to the audience today, still wondering about the importance of financial literacy? And we'll start with Trish this time.
Okay. Well, I think I had said it a little bit earlier that it's never too late to start, but it starts with you, right? So make that choice to want to learn, to use those resources around you. I mean, we learn so many resources that Veronique has through Sun Life, and the J Educational with Scott, and the women and resources for women that we have with Paulette. So, make sure that you use the resources that are around you. Reach out even to your local bank, your local credit union, your finance company like ourselves, or those investment companies. And it does start with making just those small changes. It doesn't have to be a whole, shift, that whole 360. It starts with making some of those small changes now. And I think you'd be really surprised with how impactful those will be for you in reaching your goals. And, when you talk about goals, I think you commonly hear people say to make those small goals and make those longer term goals, right? So maybe your short term goal is to build up that little bit of a savings account to get maybe even 1 month savings and build your way up to that 3 month savings. And, don't forget, it's such a stressful time. There's so many things you can do to maybe have no cost ways to reward yourself. Give yourself that pat on the back when you meet that first goal and do something that doesn't cost anything. Go find the new walking trail around your home, or go call a friend, or soak in the tub, something. But I think start small, continue moving forward, and always use all these great resources that are around you, and you've got the start to success.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Trish, for that great advice. And Veronique, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was nodding because I really like one of the things that Trish. So I agree with the small step. Like, you have to break it into small things that you can do. So learn about a new concept, try to put it into application. Save $5 a week. Like, start small and congratulate yourself when you do it. It's very important because it's taking mental energy to be able to learn something new and something sometimes that is scary. So you have to associate it with, something that's going to make you feel good after you've taken action. The other thing is, I would say, ask for advice. So if you were sick or if you were not sure about your health, you would go see a doctor. If you're not sure about the medication, you're going to go see a pharmacist. If you don't know about a financial concept, ask a financial professional to help you, better understand that concept and what solutions are available to you.
Yeah, I do like that idea of the recognition piece, and make sure to take the time to acknowledge and kind of give yourself a pat on the back. I think that resonated with me. Maybe we'll keep on the order here and go. We'll go up with Scott, and then maybe Paulette. I'll let you jump in after Scott.
Fully agree with everything Veronique and Trish is saying. I'll take a bit of a different angle. I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people who might be tuning into this webinar have done some of these things. They're not the people that are kind of struggling paycheck to paycheck. They already have some savings, et cetera. They might even have some retirement planning and access to professionals. So the angle I would take is if this doesn't apply to you, help. Right? If it doesn't apply to the self, think what can you do to help the community, right? What can you do to help others? Because we all have a vested interest in this. The more our population is financially independent, financially capable, and financially resilient, everybody wins. Because financial services or social services that we're trying to help those people that are marginalized, those new Canadians, those individuals that are struggling with access to resources and jobs. We want to do more of that, but the more we can help all learn and the more we can help all benefit from this, the better we are. So the advice I would give is for those individuals that might not need the kind of supports that we're talking about here, get involved with your organization. I mean, Fairstone, Sun Life, you guys are doing a great job of helping to raise the tide for all the boats to benefit from this. But the individuals in the webinar that are tuning in, I would suggest find out what is your company doing to help get involved in the community, to mentor other people that could really benefit from this fairly essential but basic knowledge that everybody should have. So that would be my spin on it, I guess, is if it doesn't apply to you at a personal level, ask what can you do to help, because everybody wins in the end.
Paulette?
Yeah. Wow. What can I add to that? Well, I loved everything that was said. I'm listening for myself, listening for people in my family. I'm thinking about families. I'm thinking about the importance of sharing financial literacy skills with our children. I'm thinking about how important that kind of generational inheritance is, not of money, but of the aptitudes that folks need, the attitude that we need to teach our kids around financial literacy. so that if something happens, we can actually weather the storm and weather it together. And, perhaps we've noticed we've been going through a bit of a pandemic. So we also know that a lot of women, for example, have left the workforce to the tune of 30 years setback of women in the workforce. And a lot of the reasons why they've left is because they've had to choose between themselves, their jobs, and looking after their children. And so it's really important that we have the kind of society that recognizes the importance of these structures like childcare and how critical that is, so that we can actually have an economy that works for everyone. So for me, it's about do all the personal things in terms of the saving, in terms of making sure that those who don't have access, but also thinking of the bigger picture that we're creating a society that works for everyone, so that we can all fully participate and become financially independent. And that's a beautiful thing to me, because we'll have a much better society.
Yeah, well, very, very, very well said to all of you, and I think we have a time for a few questions. So certainly, if you have questions, you can click on the Q&A button and submit your question. I do think we have one in the queue, and I believe it's directed at Véronique. So the question reads: the importance of connecting with clients and having the tools and information is critical, but how important is it to ensure you are properly connected with clients in Canada?
So I hope I understood the question properly. So the importance of connecting with our client in Canada for us, it's really across a series of different channels that we're connecting to our clients. So it's obviously very important if we want to achieve our purpose of helping clients achieve financial security. So we see the importance as much of being able to be relevant enough to be able to engage them in taking action towards their financial security. So how can we know the importance of digital is growing. So how do we create more and more tools, but also personalized tools, so that each message that I'm sending to each of the clients means something to them, they want to engage. And it's easy enough to understand, if we're going back to behavioral economic, that they will take action. So that's very, very important to be able to go through that inertia and make progress towards financial security. I hope I answered the question properly.
Yeah, no, I think I think you did. Thank you very much. And I think we'll have time for maybe another question, and then we'll see if we can sneak another one in there. But money, and I'll just read it here. Money remains a taboo. So kids are thought to manage their money by their parents or through the adversity in life. Financial literacy must become part of the discussion in education. So I think this one is pretty easy. I'm going to go to Scott on this one, and maybe the question, and it continues here, that why is this important learning not part of a provincial or national curriculum?
That's a great question. So it's actually changing. So that actually is happening. As folks would know, our education system in Canada is provincial. So we have education ministries. We do not have a national education ministry for youth age kids. So it's under the purview of the provincial governments. So, but some of those provinces and the education ministries are fully recognizing the value and the critical, essential skills around financial literacy. They're actually starting to embed the learnings right into other courses. So it's not that it's a financial literacy course in particular, but they're embedding the elements and the pieces of financial learning into some of the other courses, whether it be budgeting incorporated into the math class, right? So planning into the social studies. So they're actually kind of spreading it around, and we're really starting to see the education ministries get more innovative and actually include and integrate some of the content in the curriculum going forward. So, and we're also seeing some great efforts around making this content relevant to youth. And that's really what's equally important. I think that was touched on by some of the other speakers as well, that it's one thing to just make the information available out there, but it has to be relevant to the particular participant. And I think we're seeing a lot of efforts in that regard as well. So there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of great things coming to the youth and to the populations, various segments, that I think is going to be really impactful going forward. So we're quite optimistic about the direction we're going in Canada. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'll sneak one last one in, and it'll be for a question to Paulette, because I think it's a really important question. How has the subject of women in governance and financial literacy changed in the last 5 years? And where would you like it to be in 5 to 10 years in the way of improved equality for young and professional women?
I'm really excited about what I'm seeing, actually, because I think that it's been proven, particularly during this pandemic, and hopefully beyond, that women are critical to, right now, the economic recovery that we need to have in Canada. And so we're seeing more and more the importance of women being able to be at the table, be a part of the decision making that needs to happen. For the first time, we have Chrystia Freeland, who was Minister of Finance in Canada, as well as Deputy Prime Minister, who I think is a role model for other women in Canada. And it's also great that we're seeing more and more women take leadership positions, and setting that example that we need to have, because I would say that it's been somewhat imbalanced over the years, and despite the fact that we've always had the capacity and ability, we haven't had the recognition. So I'm excited about seeing the impact that this will have on young women, where they can actually see themselves in the role. There's a saying that says, sometimes you got to see it to be it. And I think that's where we are now, and we're needed to be a part of the economic recovery, a full economic recovery coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, it's thank you for that, and I do think that actually brings us to the end. And this morning I started my day on a very positive note, and I certainly giving back and being involved, I find it so rewarding. And so at 7 a.m. this morning, I was on a JA worldwide discussion, and on that there was actually a quote that I think we can maybe end the session with, that was from Gandhi, and it read, "Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization." And I thought that was a great recap of this discussion. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank the panelists and everyone that's joined, and hopefully you've been able to take away from this discussion. And I'd love to just wish everyone a beautiful day, and we can conclude. Thank you again to all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Francois. Thanks,
Take care, everyone.
Thank
nice
you.
to share the stage with you. Bye-bye.
I know.